Okay, so to get started, my name is Briar Fox. With me I have
Sam Hoffman.
Yep, and today we watched the movie Lucy. So we're just going to kind of talk about, analyze certain events in the movie to relate back to the psychoanalytic theory. So to kind of give a layout, at first we're just going to kind of talk about our observations of the film, then I'll introduce the psychoanalytic theory, and finally we'll compare the film to the psychoanalytic theory. So to get started, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being low and 10 being high, how would you rate your interest in the film Lucy?
Oh, I freaking love the movie. I'd put it super high up there. I'm not quite sure if it's like a 10, but it's definitely like upper 8, low 9 type of range.
Okay.
It's got a lot of interesting premises that I've always found to be really cool.
See, and that's exactly why I like it. I feel like it has a lot of power within its theme. What observations did you make and/or what ideas stood out to you the most?
The fact that numbers mean nothing and that they're only there because we as like feeble-minded humans need something in order to comprehend the world around us, and that the actual universe isn't governed by mathematics or numbers, it's governed by time.
Yeah, that is interesting because it does hold a lot of power in numbers and just how much capacity our brains actually do hold. I don't know, I think that's the most interesting, is just that we only hold a certain amount and what we could be capable of is
far greater than what we currently
exactly are. And just for my knowledge, with no high expectations on my end for you, what is your understanding of the psychoanalytic theory?
I have no idea what that means.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I'm going to kind of just explain it a little bit. On paper, the psychoanalytic theory explains human personality as a series of stages that is formed through inner conflicts. Freud, which you're
Yes.
You're in the know of Freud.
That's the guy who said if you like your mom, you want to sleep with her or something like that.
I think you're right. Something along those lines, but
yeah. I think he said that. I'm pretty sure he said
that.
Pretty sure he said that.
Probably a lot less like that, but
I was gonna say maybe a little
Freud
more
had a lot of
smart.
observations. But Freud theorized how unconscious conflicts occur between components of the human mind, the id, the ego, and the superego. So to kind of fill in with that, sorry, I lost my place. Oh yeah, so I'll kind of explain what the three of those mean.
Good.
I was gonna say it won't get too hard. The id is the primitive and the instinctual part of the mind. The superego operates as a moral conscious, so what is deemed acceptable to society. And the ego is the realistic part that mediates between the desires of the id and the superego. So to make it easier for you to kind of understand, I did print out.
You printed me out a pictogram.
Yes, because it's easier to kind of look at it. I have this. So that the id is like your instincts, your natural like fight or
Reptile
flight.
brain.
Exactly. The superego is like your morals. So like you don't steal because that's not yours, or I'm not gonna punch this person in the face because
they didn't do anything.
The ego is the place in between the two, the reality. So like where we live. At what point do your instincts and your morals combine, which creates your reality? So to kind of dive deeper in with the film, as we know, the main character Lucy was forced under the influence of a drug that allowed her increasing access to the use of her brain. This caused her to gain many abilities the average person cannot. At what point in the movie do you feel the main character, Lucy, had to use her primitive instincts that may have gone against her morality?
Well, I mean, right off bat, after the dude kicks her in the stomach and she has, like, that gravity seizure or whatever, and then she comes back to and automatically is, like, 20 times smarter than the average person, and instead of just, like, following the social norms of not killing everybody in your sight, she goes on, like, a little mini rampage of murdering everybody that was imprisoning her.
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from. She came from a point where she was
pleading
for her life to just
scared out of her wit's end, and then all of a sudden is just like, I actually don't think I need to be scared because I know exactly how to handle this situation. So I'm just going to revert to whatever my brain tells me I need to do, which just so happens to be murder everybody in this building.
That would definitely be her going against her morality. What were some of Lucy's natural instincts before she started to gain more use of her brain, specifically before she took the drug allowing her to do so?
Okay, that one's cool. I definitely think that she didn't trust, what was the dude's name? Thompson or something like that at the very beginning?
Irrelevant character, somebody.
Yes.
Yeah.
He gets killed off in like the first 10 minutes of the film. But she knew that she should not trust him, and he was begging and pleading and, oh, please, you have to do this. These people don't like me, blah, blah, blah. There's money in it for you, blah, 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 all this, that, and the other. And she knew in her gut not to trust this dude. It was like an instinct. She knew that this was like, it kept showing the cheetah and the gazelle.
Mm-hmm.
She knew that she was in a predator-prey situation and that she was the prey. She knew it. And that was before having any of the drugs make her the smartest person to have ever been.
Yeah, that was really good. I honestly, I thought about it, and a lot of mine was just how when she was taken into the room, like, she was crying. Like, that's just a natural, like, kind of instinct to be hopeless and to feel your emotions. And after that point, I feel like once the drugs were instilled into her, she just kind of became emotionless.
Well, I mean, you did hear what she said. She said she lost all despair, she lost all hope, she lost all fear, she lost all of those with the increased intelligence. And so she did lose a piece of herself, and that's why she kept that one police officer dude around, so that way she could remember that she's a human being. That, I mean, granted, she's the smartest human being in the current world, but
Yeah.
she was at one point just an average Joe, much like that guy.
See, that kind of leads into to where I'm going to get at, because my next question asks, do you feel as though the use of her brain gradually increasing affected her reality negatively or positively?
I think that depends on your perception of positive and negative. I think for her, it might have boosted almost everything in her life. Like, she now has a much greater control of her body, other people's bodies, and the world around her. But at that same exact time, that comes with the negative being that she loses a person or a part of who she used to be. She's not that sweet, loving girl anymore. She's a very cold, smart, and calculated person. So I think it depends on what you put more value on. Do you put more value on personal success, or do you put more value on personal success?
Right. Yeah, well, I
think I just said personal
you did,
success
but
twice.
I understood where you were getting.
Like personal gain or like family values.
Right. And I think there was a point in the movie that kind of stood out the most on that aspect is when, I mean, it was all unwilling anyways, but if you think about it, knowledge is power, and anybody wants power. But there was a point where she called her mom and was like, I can feel everything. I can feel when
every atom in the air. I can see the gravity. I know each memory from the day that I was born.
And it's at that point where it's like, do you want to know all that? Is that a privilege, or is that just too overtaking to the average mind?
I also think it depends on the person on that front too. I think it honestly does. I think some people could have the capability of handling that much knowledge. And I think it's so much knowledge that some people would have their entire reality shattered around them, and they would be like a vegetable because of it.
See, and I think because she was just an average young adult, kind of living the party life, did not willingly do this whatsoever. I think she definitely followed.
Richard was his name.
Richard, that was his name.
His name was Richard, not Thompson or whatever the heck I said.
Anyways.
Party girl following the
yeah
life.
she was a party girl, kind of following that life. She didn't have a choice, whereas there was another character Morgan Freeman played him, where he was very, very intelligent on the specific topic of using more and more and more capacity of your brain. I feel as though if he were to do that drug and willingly know what he was doing, I feel like he would have had much more time to process and understand what was happening and expectations.
I even would go as far as to say that he would have more capability of using his newfound capabilities. Like, he would probably be way more in the realm of knowing what to do and how to do it than Lucy was, because the entire movie is just her more or less experimenting with what all she can and can't do. Granted, she has a pretty good understanding of what she can and can't do, but I even think about it like at the very end at the very end of the movie where the guy has the gun to the back of her head and she's like traveling through time. She's not 100% sure what in the world she's doing. She just keeps putting her hands out and like throwing stuff this way and throwing stuff that way and then pushing to go different directions. And she wasn't, I never take that scene as her having complete knowledge of the fact that she's capable of time traveling. It's more like,
it's almost like it was instinctual after she had that much capacity.
She just was curious of where, when, and how she could do it. And so I think that shows a level of ineptitude, a level of novicery, where she has no idea what all she can and can't do, but she has a pretty good understanding of what she might be able to do, and so needs experimentation in order to figure that out. The Morgan Freeman character, whose name escapes me right now, he's Professor something. Yeah. He's Professor something, but the professor, I feel as though he would have a much greater capacity of doing than she did, because of his work in that line of work, where he knows the steps that could be happening based on how much brain power he unlocks, and he knows what the next step could look like as well.
Right. Interesting. Let's move on. With as much capacity as her brain began to use, do you think her morals as a human changed or stayed the same considering her new ability?
It definitely changed. The amount of people that she just kind of offed without really acknowledging that they were living, breathing creatures with a sentience, much like herself. I mean, granted, not a single other character in that entire movie could hold a candle to how smart she was. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what gave her almost what would be a god complex, with the amount of people who she inadvertently ruined a big old portion of their life, like with the car scene alone, where she's driving around and she makes like 20 or 30 so odd people crash and burn cars and destroy their one of, if not their only mode of transportation. Their insurance isn't going to fucking cover that.
See, that's where I think I might think a little differently.
It's her
morals definitely did change, but I don't think they changed how you're saying they did. I feel as though they stayed the same considering the new knowledge she was gaining. As in, there was a part in the movie where somebody had said something about people dying or whatever, and she had just kind of looked at it and was like, no one ever truly dies. And so in my head, that makes me think that she has more knowledge on what happens after death or whatnot, and that her morals...
And you don't think that gave her some form of a god complex comparative to a normal human being, and that's why she's capable of doing the things that she was doing, where like she would just kill people and she would not really worry about it. She would ruin their day, if not a large portion of their life, because not everybody can afford to get another car.
I wouldn't say it wasn't a god complex. I'm just saying with the amount of knowledge she holds, I feel like she understood life more than she did prior. So she understood life as not as important, considering she holds that knowledge. So by her kind of just killing some of these people, her morals just knew, well, they're not that, like, doesn't hurt, like, technically the average human mind might think that it's a terrible thing, but in her head,
would that not be a god complex to a normal person like you or me?
I just said that it is a god complex, but it's not, that has nothing to do with morals in my books.
Fair, I guess.
And that's just you had a good point. I just kind of thought about it in a different light, considering the knowledge she had held. But to kind of wrap things up about the whole id, ego, and superego, so the personality as a whole, what about her personality as a whole? Do you think she changed, or do you think her new knowledge allowed her to...
I think I know where you're going with this question. I think just about everything about her changed. Like, even on the phone with her mom, Her mom was like, how's my sweet little girl? She is no longer a sweet little girl. She just got done murdering a bunch of people, digging a bullet out of her shoulder, and then holding an entire hospital hostage.
Mm-hmm.
She is no longer the sweet little girl. I'm sure that she was much more bubbly because it even showed it in the party scene where she was having so much fun, dancing in a rave, screaming and whatnot. And so it seems like that she was a much more energetic and fun and loving person. Whereas after the drug kicks into effect, she's very stone cold and composed and thoughtful and very smart, very just flat out very smart. Where that was not the case before. I'm sure. I mean, we don't get to see a whole lot of her prior to having the drug and put it into her system, but it seems like she was a very naive and not necessarily bright individual, because I mean she got tricked by Richard into doing whatever the heck. Don't want to spoil too much of the movie, but she got tricked by Richard into walking into that office when she knew flat out that was a predator prey situation. Mm-hmm. And I mean it really did, and even with like the blatant fear that she showed after being like face to face with Mr. Yagamoto, it was very obvious that she didn't have a grasp on the situation and that she was not in control, whereas every single situation that she had the drug put into her, she showed full control of the situation in every way, shape, and form.
So at the very end, when she had reached 100% capacity and she just kind of
turned herself into a supercomputer,
disappeared, yeah. What's your interpretation of that? Where do you think she went? What do you think? Was she matter at that point? Was she physical or?
See, I've had this concept for a while now. After you die, you transcend into a different plane. And I think I've told you about this in the past, but to give it a very short, long and the short of it, you've got a two-dimensional thing like a cup. Pretend this is just flat. At the start of its life, it has no idea what it's doing. As it gets to the middle, it realizes there's a hole in it, and I think it has a little empathize. I think it's pretty cool about that. It finds itself pretty cool. As it reaches the end of its life, it realizes that it holds a purpose in a third dimension. It's a cup in the third dimension. So I think as she reached the end of her life, she did not transcend, or she did not just die. She transcended death and became something that we, as regular people, can't truly comprehend. And that's why when the guy was like, where is she? Where did she go? She managed to send his phone a text message that said, I am everywhere. Just because she's no longer here, she's no longer there. She is literally everything at all times, all at once. And in my opinion, that's what would be, in that characteristic, it would be like a fourth dimensional being, where she is on a different plane of existence that we can't see or interact with, much like how two-dimensional things can't see or interact with three-dimensional things.
Oh, yeah, he has explained to me that before, and it's always been very interesting. And now thinking about it, it really does relate to the movie very, very well, because you go through different scenes of 10%, 20, 30, 40, all the way to 100, and finally it's almost like she realized she knew her purpose
and
on a different plane.
Transcended this plane of existence.
No, that's a really
to
good
go to a higher one.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap it up, because that was a really good ending there. It had a good ending. Yeah, for sure.
I love the movie. It's a great movie. If you've not seen it, would highly recommend it.
Thank you very much.